Good stuff. So, welcome to the second episode of the podcast, the Bring It Coaching podcast. And on today's podcast and episode, I've got the one and only Dr. Gary Mendoza. How are you doing, Gary?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Thanks for inviting us on.
No problem. No problem. I mean, I know we've spoke previously and we've also done a podcast in the past. But this time things for me since then have changed a little and progressed, and looking to sort of venture out more so on my own and discover. And I think we've had a few conversations in between that about a few things personally and my own business. I know we've chatted. And so things for me this time around are a little bit different. And the way I'm looking to take my own development and, sort of service and offering to my own audience has sort of grown. So just want to say thank you to yourself to begin with, for supporting myself when I have reached out to you. So you're always like for me, you are someone that's like an open book. I'm willing to hear and listen to myself, really. So thank you for that.
No problem at all.
So I just want to, the reason why I brought you on, Gary, because I know that you're making a real big scene in the industry, and I've been following you again for some time now. And so I think it's important to get, your message further out there, and let people know what you're about and stuff. So before we sort of go into, the specifics of what you're doing, so just tell me a bit about yourself, Gary. Like who is Gary, and how did you start, and what led you to where you are today?
Okie doke. I started out, I was in the Royal Air Force, and then I left there. I worked as a computer engineer for a few years, and then retrained as a personal trainer. So I've actually been a personal trainer now for, I always have to work this out, it's about 33, 34 years now. I was one of the first personal trainers in the UK.
Brilliant.
And I represented the UK at the first ever personal training convention, IDEA, in America.
Wow.
So I've worked as a PT, I've managed gyms, I've managed leisure centres, I've managed country clubs for the Savoy. So I've kind of got broad experience. But the one thing I found working as a personal trainer was all my clients wanted to know about nutrition, and I was forever blagging it, make it up as I went along, basically. So I thought maybe I should learn about this. So I decided to do a degree in nutrition. And by the time I've now got a first class honours in applied nutrition. And by the time I'd finished that, I was way more interested in nutrition and weight management. So I worked for Future Fit for over 10 years, delivering all their nutrition courses. I wrote all their nutrition courses.
Brilliant.
And we found that the trainers I was training, they were coming back going, oh, this really works, this weight management. And it wasn't rocket science. It was just teaching people about sound nutrition, getting them more active, creating a calorie deficit. They lost weight. So I said to the company, we need to research this to find out what's going on, because it would be a really good bit of publicity. And so they sponsored me to do my PhD. So my PhD is in a multidimensional model for the treatment of male obesity in a community setting. That's a really long-winded title. But it's basically men's weight management. And it was personal trainers going out into the field, delivering my course. But the key aspect of it, really, I think, was the psychometric testing. It was testing whether people were psychologically ready to change. And what I found was people will take on personal trainers even though they're not psychologically ready to change.
Right.
And so what we did in the second part of my research, I said to these trainers, I said, right, if you take anyone on, they've got to kind of meet this criteria psychologically. And so we had like a screening process, if you like, and we got an 86% success rate. So suddenly the success rate went through the roof, because everyone that these trainers were working with was psychologically ready to kind of make a lifestyle change.
So they're more compliant with the program that they.
Yeah, I mean, it made the trainer's life easier, and the clients got better results as well. So I then worked in New Zealand for a couple of years, lecturing at Massey University in sports nutrition. And I repeated the research there with the Maori and South Pacific Islanders. We got exactly the same results, 86%.
Wow.
And Manawatu, which was the region where Massey University is, quite near Wellington, that whole region said, we want to adopt this as our weight management product. We want to train all our dietitians, nutritionists, social workers, whatever, in how to deliver this weight management system. But the only problem was because it was public health, they couldn't turn anyone away. So they could screen people, but the problem was, well, what do you do with the ones that aren't ready to change? And so this is where I kind of came across motivational interviewing, because motivational interviewing lets you take somebody that's not ready to change and help them move to a point where they're ready to go. And so that's really where I kind of started to really get into the behavior change and the psychology side of things.
Yeah, it's a massive impact, because like you said, I've had, even myself, I've had clients in the past where they're all, you get into like the consultation process and just getting a chat along with them, and they're really hyped up, ready to, change, and from what they say, but their actions speak different. If they're not turning up, or they're lacking in some areas, and they're not doing what you're asking them to do. So it's a massive area of interest, which definitely needs highlighting. Just before we go any further, I just wanted to go back to the career change. Why did you do that? Like, what came about the career change? Why did you head in this direction?
I worked, like I say, when I came out the forces, I worked as a computer engineer, and I was one of only 3 or 4 people that could do my job. I was a telecommunications specialist, and the company that I worked for was an American company, Tandem, and so all their computers are what they call non-stop. They don't break down because everything's mirrored, so they don't go. But the thing about that is they back all the stock exchange, all your cash point machines are backed by them, and so they're kind of critical infrastructure. The role I did was national support for Europe, and so I only really got involved if things were really going pear-shaped and like the banks were really kicking off. So it was majorly stressful.
Right.
And I loved it. I loved doing it, but I was getting really bad headaches and stuff.
Right.
And I went to my doctor, and they literally did brain scans at King's College and God knows what. And in the end, my own GP, fair play to him, I wish I could kind of meet him again. He said to me, he said, "This is stress related." He says, "So you've got a choice. You either put up with this," he says, "I doubt you'll see your 50s. He says, "or you make a career change." He said, "because you're not coping with the stress really well."
Wow.
And so it was fairly black and white. He like put his cards on the table and said, "Here we go." So I'd always been into fitness. I played rugby for the Air Force. So I thought, okay, I'll switch then. So I switched from a really well-paid, high-paid job to start from scratch as a personal trainer, which nobody knew what they were anyway. So
I mean that's
it was a bit of a gamble.
Yeah, that's like, if you were to say to someone that now making that career change in the current climate of the industry, you could probably say, yeah, like a lot of people are doing it and they've got a better chance. But from where you did it from back then, it wasn't much around at all. Like, that must have been a scary thought, scary like jump to do that.
Do you know what? I don't think I thought it through very much. I just decided I need to make a career change, or I wasn't going to live that long. So it's like, okay, well, I love fitness, I'll do that. Wow. And I kind of thought, well, personal training, at least I got a load of skills. Maybe I can manage a gym or whatever, because I had management training and that from when I was in the forces. And I was very fortunate that the first job I got was managing Old Hall Leisure, which is a very upmarket leisure club in Chester, and I was able to personal train clients in there, and so I kind of hit the ground running. And then when I went to the States to represent Great Britain as a personal trainer, I got a load of press coverage in the local paper saying, "Oh, the first personal trainer in Britain is going to America," and blah blah. And when I came back, I said to the paper, I said, "Look, it'd be a really good idea if I maybe trained one of your journalists so as people can see what personal training is." Because up until then, people only really knew, oh, celebrities in Hollywood have personal trainers, because in the UK there weren't any. No gyms had personal trainers. And so I did that. And off the back of that, I then ended up writing a column in the paper every week. And because I was in the paper every week, I then became the go-to person. And so I was able to leave the management role in Old Hall Leisure and go out on my own as a self-employed personal trainer, because I then had sufficient clients.
So you establish your authority almost by consistently just posting up in this article and just being there.
Well, yeah, and I always advise trainers to do this. Write to your local paper, because I always maintain journalists are lazy. And so if you've got somebody writing in going, oh, I can write about the latest fitness fad, and this is what I think about fat loss, or this is what I think about this exercise, they maybe won't use it. But if you do it a few times, you might just hit lucky when it's like a quiet news week, and they'll go, oh, do you know what? That guy keeps pestering us. Why don't we use his article? And once you've got your foot in the door, it's like, it's like I say, I ended up writing my own fitness column every week. And at that point, I didn't have other than my personal training qualifications, I didn't have a degree or anything, but it like you say, you become the authority. So there's definitely an element of, people always say, oh, you were lucky. It's like, well, I kind of made my own luck really, because I just persisted and things fell into place.
So what do you think, like, most trainers these days are sort of lacking then? Is it like the case of there's too much competition? You think people just give up too easily? Like, what's your take on that?
I think there is a lot of competition. You've got to accept that. You are not going to go out and, because I think some trainers make the mistake of, I think it's partly the training company's fault, because they tell people, oh yeah, trainer's a personal trainer, you'll be on 35k a year and blah blah, and it's like, I don't know that many personal trainers that are earning that much. But also you've kind of got to go out there, you've got to go and find the customers. So you need business skills, you need marketing skills. Now you can either go and learn them or employ somebody to do your marketing for you.
Right.
And it's kind of similar with nutrition. I think you need to learn nutrition properly, not just like a 2-day course, or work with someone, collaborate with a registered nutritionist or a dietitian.
Right.
But you need to find a niche. You need to find something that's unique to you. First off, who do you like working with? Is it older generation, younger generation, male, female, pregnant, post-menopause? Find where your niche is, who you want to work with, and then really become an expert in that area. And as I say, get marketing advice, definitely, because that was the mistake I made when I first became self-employed.
Right.
Coming back to the UK after being in New Zealand, I tried to do the marketing myself and had some success. But once I employed someone and got some proper advice, that's when it took off.
Got you.
But you definitely want a niche. And this is why I push behavior change, because I think there are not that many personal trainers or trainers in general that have got good behavior change skills.
Right.
And ultimately, when you go to a trainer, whether you be an athlete or whether you want to just get a bit fitter or whether you're worried about your health, the bottom line is any of those people are going to have to make some type of lifestyle change. And so as a coach trainer, you need to understand how to help people make that change.
Yeah. It's not just simply just giving them an exercise program or a few nutrition plans and off you go with it. It's trying to reverse like habits that have been embedded within them throughout 20+ years.
You're right. A 40-year-old client who's been doing whatever they've been doing for the last 20, 25 years, they're not going to change in the next 3 weeks. It's like, you're going to have to really work at this. And they are as well. It's got to be a collaborative effort.
Right.
But you need to understand how people make changes, so as you can kind of then explain that to the client, so they understand what the journey's going to be, and that it's not going to be a quick fix. All these people that hand out 6-week transformation and 12-week transformation, I think it sends the wrong message, because you're kind of saying, do this program and then you're fixed. And it's like, well, no, whatever you do, you need to be able to do now for the rest of your life. Right. Because that's what's going to, get you to where you want to be, but more importantly, keep you there. Because we're really good at weight loss. Follow any radical, weird diet you want, you'll lose weight generally, simply because it creates a calorie deficit. But what we're not very good at is weight maintenance. In other words, when we get to the weight we want to be, keeping that weight at that weight, because what tends to happen is people follow some radical program, lose the weight, get that bit fitter, and then they just go back to doing what they did in the first place.
Normally did, yeah.
And I always say to clients, I say, look, it's your lifestyle that got you fat. So only changing that lifestyle is going to get you thinner again. And it's like you kind of have to buy into that.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking about that, what you just said is, why is it the fact that people are drawn to these short-term fixes, and is it because it doesn't sound sexy to try and put in the effort to work out as a lifestyle change? Like, who's responsible for that message? What do you think about that?
We live in a society that's instant gratification. We want a pill to fix it. We want the short-term program. We want an app.
Right.
It's got to be done in a few weeks. So, and we've got this mentality of, oh yeah, I've got to fix it quick. And we don't buy into that longer term thing. And I totally agree with what you say there. It doesn't sound sexy. Oh, it will take you the next 2 years to get fit and healthy. That's a difficult sell. I always, Mary Barassi, who was my supervisor, she was my head tutor when I did my applied nutrition degree, and she was one of my supervisors on my PhD. And she said to me, and I always remember this, she said, the problem with sound nutrition is it's not sexy.
Right.
And I kind of didn't get it at the time, but I do now, because it's like, well, it doesn't sound very thrilling. Just eat more fruit and veg, cut down on your takeaways, don't have as much alcohol. No, we want the magic food that's going to kind of burn fat for us or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's that, when you say that, it's to me that what I just thought then, it's like we're trying to minimize the foods that give us the pleasure, that give us that instant like feel good. So when we say that to people, it's like it's unheard of, or why should I do that? So that's what comes to my mind.
It's just like, I want to get fit, I want to get healthy, but I don't want to do the work.
Yeah. So how does it compare to when you first started off to now then? Like, obviously there's a lot more attention around social media and more pressure on people to look a certain way. Like, what was it back then compared to now, in the sense of how would you have gotten people to stick it out for long term? Was there more of a marketing message around the fact that it's going to take a year, 2 years, 3 years compared to now?
No, I don't think there was. And I think this was half the problem. I mean, social media has just made life even more difficult, because now people continually are bombarded with messages that say, we can fix this in 6 weeks, 12 weeks. Like you say, all the Instagram pictures with filters and God knows what, this is what you should look like, or this is the way you should be. This is the life you should be leading.
Right.
And people wanting to be famous and be a celebrity. And when you say to them, well, what do you want to be famous, or what do you want to be a celebrity for? They go, well, nothing. I just want to be famous. It's like they don't want to have achieved anything or proved anything or invented anything. They just want to be famous. It's a totally different world we live in. And I think it was one of the things that we discovered when I worked for Future Fit. And as I say, because that was the first time I think a training company in the UK had actually employed a registered nutritionist. Up until then, every single training company, I think I'm right in saying, was just using Joe Blogs to do their nutrition, who most probably 9 times out of 10 did not have a degree in nutrition. And so they actually weren't very well qualified to even write the nutrition program, let alone teach it. And so I changed the culture, certainly within Future Fit, in that, no, you've got to have a degree in nutrition if you're going to be a tutor for us in nutrition.
So what was your burning, like, it sounds like you had like a burning desire to make this change and to cultivate this, this sound principles of nutrition? Like, what was your driving factor for that then?
I think it's interesting because I did my nutrition degree, as I said to you, solely with the intent of, I just want to learn more about nutrition because I'm blagging it. And by the time I'd finished my degree 3 years down the line, I was like absolutely fascinated by nutrition. I'd kind of lost interest in personal training, to be frank. It was like, no, nutrition's way more interesting. So I was really into it. But obviously I needed to work, and at that time it was quite difficult to get jobs in nutrition. And so I started work with Future Fit, teaching their level 3 PT course and teaching gym instructor. But because I had the nutrition skills, they said, well, you write the nutrition course for us. And off the back of writing that and seeing how it kind of enlightened PTs when they were taught nutrition properly, it became really obvious to me that, look, as an industry, we should be doing better at this, because we're not good at it. And things have improved slowly. I mean, now you've got the AFN, the Association for Nutrition, certifying training companies' nutrition courses. So at long last, we're starting to get nutrition training that is evidence-based and not just based on the whim or whatever somebody thought they knew about nutrition.
So now the training companies, they can't blag their nutrition content to the trainers now.
Well, I hope not. I mean, you still hear stories of some things that are being taught, which are a bit worrying, but I hope what happens now is when trainers do the nutrition part of their level 3 training, they realize how little they know, and maybe think, well, I either want to go and learn more, or I'm going to collaborate with somebody and do my training that way. I always think collaboration is the way to go, because you can either be a personal trainer or you can be a registered nutritionist. If you want to do both, then you've got to get properly qualified in both. And there's no shortcut to that.
No. Just one question for that. So now that you had all this experience in nutrition and knowledge, going back to that point where you was in the previous job, do you think that maybe it was your nutrition that was sort of triggering the stress even more? Would you have changed what you know now based on the food and all the nutrition stuff? Anything going back to that job that you was in, the highly stressful job, do you think your nutrition played a part towards that stress? Was there any change that you would have made?
I think I would have improved my diet. I mean, the thing was, even when I was in that job, I exercised regularly. I still loved it. I always used to go to the gym, kind of literally 5 a.m. And train for an hour before going into work. So I was always really conscious of my fitness, because I was kind of always into that. But my diet was rubbish. I mean, I was living on coffee and snacks and God knows what, because I was sat in a control room as an engineer online, basically. And it was, my problem was I couldn't let problems go. It's like if a fault came up, I'd work on it during the day, and then I'd go home and I'd still think about it. It's like I just couldn't let. I'm that type of personality where it's just like, no, I've got to solve that. It's really bugging me. I would literally sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, and think, I know what the answer to that is. And then I'd get out of bed, go into work and fix it, because I couldn't lay there in bed thinking, I'm sure that's what the fix is.
Oh man.
And so, yeah, it was kind of my own personality was my downfall, I think.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking now, like, you know, there's probably a lot of people out there who are in that position that you were once in. And it could just be a few tweaks of nutrition that's going to allow them to, you know, just relieve some of the stress. So, you know, I've come across a lot of, you know, high earning clients and constantly just work mode on. So what would be the sort of advice for people in that position who are constantly, you know, having to run like a business or a high earning paid, trying to balance their food with the workplace? What would you say to someone like that?
I work with a couple of CEOs of quite big companies, and they're just kind of my personality, you know, that they do 16, 18-hour days, ridiculous. But I say to them, and I make them diarize exercise. I say, put it into your diary as an appointment that's a non-negotiable. And they, when I first start work with them, they're like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. I'm saying, look, if you go and do 45 minutes of exercise, whether it's just go out for a walk or whatever, you will get that back in spades in terms of your productivity, the reduction in stress, your kind of future outlook, lowering your blood pressure, all those type of things. And I said, similar with diet, don't overlook it, because if you've got good diet, it will actually make you better at your job. And it is an education process, and educating them about what rather than just going, oh, you need to do it because it's healthy nutrition. You need to get buy-in from them. And this is where the behavior change skills come in, because it's helping them discover their reasons why exercise stroke activity. I don't like using the word exercise. I prefer to talk about activity. Getting them to find out why activity may be beneficial for them. Now, much as a lot of fitness professionals go on about, oh yeah, but it's being fit and being healthy, that's your particular values and beliefs. For a lot of these guys and women that are in these high-powered jobs, their driving focus is success in their career or earning more money. And so you have to get them to realize how being a bit more active, having better diet is going to improve those things, earn them more money, get them better careers, whatever, because that's their values. So, and that's a behavior change skill. It's understanding, getting the client to find out what their values are, and then getting them to tap into that. So as they see the behavior change as that's really going to benefit me because it moves me in the direction I want to go.
Yeah, close to the goal. Yeah, and that's interesting you say that, because a lot of people that I talk to and who are, you know, interested in training with us, it's always the surface level stuff of when I get fit, when I get healthy, and then it really does take some time before you can really just try to dig out, peel the layers back, as I like to say, like on you peel, you're trying to just peel the layers back until you're really trying to understand what it is they want. So, and I guess, is that part of the motivation interviewing process that you undertake then?
It's part of motivational interviewing, but actually that is more of a cognitive behavioral technique as a thing called Socratic questioning. And what it does is it teaches the client how to ask themselves critical questions, kind of honest questions. So like you were saying, peel back the layers. So when they say, I want to get fit, you would say, why do you want to get fit? And they might go, oh, well, because I know that being fit's really good for me. And so then if you were using Socratic questions, it's a bit like being the annoying child, I always describe it, where the kid just keeps going, yeah, but why? Yeah. And when you give an answer, they go, yeah, but why is that? Yeah. And so it's kind of that thing. So then they go, well, because I'll be a bit healthier. Okay, well, what would be the benefits to you then, career-wise and lifestyle-wise, if you're a bit healthier? Oh, will I be able to do that? I'll be able to do that. And okay, if you were able to do that and do that, what would that bring you? And so, like you say, you keep peeling it back until you find out what the real kind of what we would call a driving need is, as opposed to a surface need. Driving need. When you ask anybody any question, why do you want to do that? You'll get their surface need. But if you use Socratic questioning and kind of keep digging, you'll start to find what the driving need is. And that's kind of what's running the show. It's what's at the subconscious level.
Right. And as a coach, it's our job to try to lead them the way forward to that underlying driving need.
Yeah, help them find their driving need. Because what you always get when a client first signs up with you or first speaks to you will be the superficial reason, kind of that surface thing. Right. Oh, I want to be a bit fitter. I need to lose a bit more weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? What in your life is going to be better if you lose a bit more weight? Oh, well, it'll be da-da-da. Okay, and if you've got da-da-da, how would that help you? And what you'll find is the client's responses slow down. And what I mean by that is when you initially ask the question, they've got the answer there ready straight away because it's in your conscious. But as you keep digging away, they're going to have to start accessing their subconscious and unconscious. And what you'll see the client doing quite often, if you're doing it right, they'll start to look up. They'll go quiet. They'll be looking up. And that shows they're really trying to find the answer now.
Yeah.
And that's what you really want. You want to find that underlying, because that's what's going to keep them in your program.
Absolutely. So do you think that people discover it more, like if they were to join and you haven't really touched too deep on why they are here, but do you think as, let's say you enter, they do come onto the program, do you think they will discover it more as they go along the journey, or is it part of our job to just find that? Not at all.
It's part of your job to make really sure that they are ready to make changes, because the one thing that came out of my research was people will employ trainers even though they're not psychologically ready. And I think what happens is, and this is my hypothesis, they take on the trainer in the misguided belief that the trainer will have all the answers.
Right.
And so every time they hit a barrier, it'll be, oh, how do I do that? What should I do now? What should I eat now? If you continue to just respond like that, and so they're kind of in motivational interviewing terms, we call it being in a one-up position. In other words, the client sees you as having all the answers and maybe that bit better than them. That is not how you want to be working with a client. You want an even relationship where the client feels it's a collaboration.
Right.
And so they try and find their answers. They won't always be able to. And that's where you can use your expertise and kind of, what I would say, guide them, point them in the right. So rather than just going, right, this is what you need to do, which is a directing style, it's kind of follow me, here we go. You want to be alongside them going, well, there's a few options. You might look at this, you could look at that, you might think about that. Out of those, which sounds like the one that will work for you? They'll consider it a bit then, and they'll plump for one of them generally. And so then we go with that. Now, the beauty of that is you've used your skill to kind of offer up what some of the answers might be, but they've opted for the one that sounds best for them. So they feel that it's a collaboration. And so you've respected their autonomy, their right to make a choice. And what we do know is that when coaches are autonomy supportive, it builds empathy. And so the client feels like, oh, this guy or this girl's really there for me. And that will move them forward, because we know that empathic coaches get far better results than coaches who lack empathy.
Wow.
So building that empathy is really important.
And do you think, I mean, empathy in itself, I mean, I guess it's a skill we can learn, but I think, is that something that everyone has? I mean, I guess the childhood experience builds that from the mother-father relationship with the parents. So is that, I mean, someone who hasn't maybe had that, where parents have been absent, or for if the childhood experience wasn't great, that could be quite tough for a coach to learn and grasp, really, if they haven't really felt any empathy from extended family or direct parents. Like, how would you go about, learning that then? Is it just a case of just coming and learning different skills or developing yourself personally and stuff? Is that something you guys do on your courses then?
Yeah, I think empathy, we know, can be improved, but I think you've got to have an element of it. And I think you're right, it's a self-development thing. And I do think that all coaches need to be aware of self-development. What am I doing to make me a better coach? What do I need to learn? So I'm a firm believer that it would be really helpful in the industry for personal trainers to have some degree of counseling skills.
Of what, sorry?
Of counseling skills.
Counseling skills, right, okay.
Because from my experience working as a personal trainer, you end up being a counselor for most of your clients anyway, because they'll ask you about exercise, and you might write exercise programs and you'll advise them on nutrition, but they will come to you with a whole bunch of other stuff, whether it be their personal relationships, what's going on in work or whatever. So you need a degree of counseling skills. And a big part of that is self-awareness and empathy. So understanding that and working on that is really important. In the introduction to behavior change workshop, which I've got online, it's only a short course, it's a little e-learning course, but within that is the thing called the Johari window, and it's a self-development tool. So, and it looks at what I know about myself, what I think other people know about me, what I think other people don't know about me, and then finally what people know about me that I don't know. So, and by understanding all those four things, you can build the most important one, which is what I know about me and what people think about me, because you can change that. The one that's difficult to uncover is what other people think about me that I don't know. Right. Because I might have a perception, oh, everybody loves me and it's great and blah, blah. But actually, when you speak to people in confidence. I'm like, oh, he's overconfident, he's cocky, or whatever it might be. So being open to learning that is so important, because you then become just a better coach.
Right. Oh man, that's really good to hear. Cool. So I want to move forward onto the actual stages of behavior change. So if I'm aware, there's 4 stages. That being said, that you guys teach the 4 stages. So the first one being the pre-contemplation stage. You able to just talk a bit about that and just share with the viewers what it's about?
Right, so the stages of change model was first proposed by Prochaska and Di Clementi, and it was first used in smoking cessation and alcohol abuse. And so those Prochaska and Di Clementi said that when people make changes, they go through these 4 stages. You start off as a pre-contemplator, which is basically you're not thinking about the problem, you're not bothered or whatever. And I'm sure all of us know maybe people that smoke. And you could say to them, oh, you don't want to smoke, you'll get cancer or whatever. They wouldn't be interested. They don't want to know. They're going to smoke, not interested at all. That would be a pre-contemplator. They're not even thinking about making a change. The next stage is contemplation. And this is where people are kind of weighing it up. So if you were to say, if you take exercise, for instance, if somebody's contemplating making a change around exercise, maybe signing up with a trainer, joining a gym, whatever, they may think, oh yeah, I really do need to get fit. I think that would be beneficial for me, but I'm not sure I've got the time. Or yeah, getting fit would be great. I'll be able to fit into better clothes, but I don't want all the soreness and that comes with exercise or whatever. So there's always a positive statement, what they can see a benefit. But then we have what we call a balancing statement, which is where you get the but in the middle, and then you get the cons. So it's pros and cons. And Janice and Mann, who are 2 other psychologists, they propose that when people make changes in their life, they weigh up the pros and cons. And if the pros outweigh the cons, we make the change. If the pros and cons are about the same, we will not do anything about it. And if the cons outweigh the pros, we are definitely doing nothing about it. So a contemplator can see as many pros as they can cons. They are in what in motivational interviewing terms we call it, they're in a state of ambivalence. They can't really decide which way to go. They're sitting on the fence. The next stage was added later, and it's called preparation. It's a fairly short stage, about 6 to 12 weeks. And what you see with somebody in preparation is the balance has tipped a bit. The pros kind of outweigh the cons now, and they are now weighing up. They may be talking to a trainer, or they're doing a bit of research online about different gyms or whatever. There's no guarantee they will do anything, but they're kind of at least leaning that way a bit. Ultimately, pros will outweigh the cons enough, and they will move into the next stage, which is action. They're doing something about it. They sign up with you as a trainer. They join the gym. They buy a diet book. They join Weight Watchers, whatever it may be. They're in action. They're taking steps. The action phase can last anywhere 6 months to a year is the general accepted, but there's no black and white number. It's not like it's this many weeks and that's it. And then hopefully, if whoever the trainer coach is, when they've got their client in action, they ultimately achieve their goal and they get to maintenance. And maintenance is the phase where you maintain whatever gains, successes you do. And that's the bit we're not very good at. We get people into action. We write the diet plan. We write the exercise program. They do it for 6, 12 weeks. And then they hit what is known as relapse. Something goes wrong and they think, sod it, I'm giving up. And then they can relapse. And you can relapse from being in action all the way back to pre-contemplation. So you can be in action one moment, something goes wrong, and you think, sod it. And you go right the way back to pre-contemplation and you don't want to hear about it anymore. Equally, you might just relapse back to preparation or contemplation. It will differ with everyone. And this is why being able to measure where somebody is on that spectrum is so important, because not only will it tell you whether they're ready to change, but as time goes along, if you test regularly, which the trainers in my research, they tested every 4 weeks, the data will tell you how well your program is working. Because if the program is working, things should be moving in a certain direction. And if it's not, the numbers are going in the wrong direction. It gives you a heads up early to think, I've got to do something here, or this client's going to drop out. And so you're kind of able to get in there and find out what's going wrong, because you might be thinking, oh, I'm doing a great job and the clients are loving it. And actually they're on the verge of dropping out.
Right. So there's got to be communication or some process in place along their journey to just see where their mindset's at, what stage that they are working towards.
Yeah, communication is such an important thing, I think. When you learn motivational interviewing, one of the best skills that you'll learn is what we call active listening. And it's really kind of hanging on every word. A lot of people think they're good listeners.
Right.
And it's not really till you learn motivational interviewing that you realize I'm not bad, but I definitely could be better. And you do become a way better listener. And the beauty of that is you will pick up on signals that are saying there's a problem here somewhere. I don't quite know what it is, but I can feel in the language or whatever that there's something we need to work on. Because in motivational interviewing, every time you meet a client, doesn't matter how long you've worked with them, you always go through the same processes. And the very first process is what we call engagement. And that engagement is just getting on board, finding how the week's going, what's happening in their life, that type of thing. And a lot of people overlook that. And they kind of, the client turns up and they've known them for months and they're just like, oh, how's it going? Let's crack on. So they've kind of papered over what could be a big problem. Whereas had they spent a bit of time making sure they checked out what was really going on and what's happening, they might have picked up on, oh, I've got this problem coming up, and problem with work or problem with the family or one of the kids or whatever it might be. But if you can pick up on that stuff, then it kind of saves you firefighting when they suddenly go, I'm leaving the program, I can't cope with it. Because at that point, it's going to be quite hard to pull them back.
Pull them back in, yeah. Okay, that sounds interesting. Just going back to that first stage, like, what is it about that pre-contemplation stage where, you know, people are, is it just a case of people totally unaware? Like, I can think of times, even in like personal relationships, there's only so much you can say to someone about changing habits, but you've got to sort of lead by example. And I think that for me personally has worked in my personal relationships, in business, just by leading and not talking as much sends a powerful message out to people. So by doing that, taking that action, is that going to be a driving factor for people to go from that first stage, pre-contemplation, to a contemplation stage?
No, there's nothing. I think coaches often make the mistake of, oh, I can fix this. I can tell you what to do. You often hear, oh, your job as a coach is to motivate people. I disagree with that, because the best type of motivation is what we would call intrinsic motivation. It comes from self-determination theory. Now, intrinsic motivation comes from within. You find it for yourself. The type of motivation that some of these trainers are talking about is what we would call extrinsic motivation or external motivation. And that's not very effective. And so your role as a coach should be to guide your client so as they find their own motivation. Now, part of that process is actually education, because one of the things that will build intrinsic motivation is competence. So the fact that a client feels able to do a certain exercise or prepare a certain meal or go shopping and buy the right things, if they feel they've got the skills, that's building their competency, and that in itself builds intrinsic motivation. But it's no good me as a coach going, right, I want you to buy this, I want you to prepare that meal, and I want you to do this every day, because there's nothing that they're finding for themselves to go, yeah, I really want to do that. So if you've got a pre-contemplator client, and you will get them, and I think the group that are going to be most susceptible to getting clients that are pre-contemplators, anybody that works in GP referral.
Right.
Because if a GP is sending somebody to a trainer, does that person really want to be there? Or are they just going because the GP said, I'm not giving you any more prescriptions, I'm prescribing exercise, that's what you've got to do. Right. So there's a real risk that those people are pre-contemplators. The other group will often be people that are put under peer pressure. So their mates are saying, oh, you put on a bit of weight, you're not looking too good, you need to get fit, or whatever. Or someone in the family even, because I've had this, husband and wife, where the husband has actually said to the wife, you need to lose some weight, you need to get a bit fitter. And I remember working with this, when I was in Cardiff managing the gym, and she told me this, that the husband had said that. I said, I don't think it's you I need to work with. I think it's your husband with that type of attitude. And she loved that. That got her on board straight away. But it just shows you that don't think that because somebody has turned up to sign up with you or take out a membership, that psychologically they're ready, because they may not be. They may be there for a whole host of other reasons. And your role as the coach, as the gym manager, whatever it might be, is help them find their own reasons, because then they're more likely to stay there.
Absolutely. Brilliant. So just going to the next one, the contemplating stage. So, people are weighing up their options, thinking about, should I go for it? Should I not? Just going back to that GP referral, like, I find that interesting. You said, like, people may not still want to be there because their GP has sent them. But isn't that like in your situation where it was like a make or break, like you had to make that decision, and you found it for yourself? So I guess, is that to say not everybody will have that and find it and have that authoritarian figure, even though they're telling them you need to do something about it? You're saying that people can still be reserved about that. Shouldn't that just take them through to that, actually, this person, because we all view the GP as the expert, and shouldn't that be enough for people to just say, like, okay, I need to actually go into that contemplation stage and do something now?
But you see, my GP, and this is why I've always thought I'd love to meet him again. He was actually really MI consistent in the way that he gave me the advice.
Right.
Because he said, right, we found nothing there. There's nothing in your blood work. There's nothing on the scan. He said, so having spoken to a few people about this, referred your case to neurologists, whatever, the general consensus is these headaches are stress-based.
Right.
He said, so you've now got a number of options. He said, you either put up with it and we can maybe medicate it or whatever. He said, but ultimately the outcome from that is not going to be good. Or you consider making some type of career choice, but ultimately the choice is down to you. So he didn't go, this is stress related, you've got to stop with that job now. He gave me the choice. He gave me the information and allowed me to make the choice. And that's what you should be doing as a coach. The client comes to you and they'll have, like you say, if they're in contemplation, they're going to have pros and cons. Now, one of the things I get, as you know, from the MI, is we can use what we call a decisional balance grid, where you get people to write down their pros and their cons, and then you get them to think a year ahead and write down the pros of not changing and the cons of not changing. Often that's enough for you as a coach to identify some of the things that they're putting as cons actually are not true. So let's just say it was losing weight, getting a bit fitter. They might put pros would be get healthier, get into smaller clothes, have a bit more energy, whatever it might be. But they may have in their cons list, I'm going to have to give up alcohol. I'll never be able to eat chocolate. I'm always going to be hungry. Now, we know none of those are true. And so with education, we can help them shift that balance. We're not going to just go, no, that's all wrong. You've got it all wrong. But if you educate in the right way, then they will come to a decision themselves. Like, oh, that's not so much of a con. Actually, I can take that one off. And so what's happening is you can slowly shift that decisional balance, but you're allowing them to make the shift. Yeah.
So once again, just guiding them through the process, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Yeah, and that's, yeah. So just going on to the next one, the action, you typically say like it's between 6 months to a year, but obviously everybody's different. So at that stage, isn't the desire and the discipline there enough to keep people on track? So
if that was the
everybody,
case, everybody that went into action would lose weight, would get fit, they would never go back again. And yet we know that does not happen. So why is that? They've obviously gone in, if they're in action, by definition, pros must be outweighing the cons. But what can happen over time is the cons can start to build up.
Right.
Oh, it's too difficult. I'm finding it very hard. I'm not able to find the time. I'm a bit too busy with work. I can't fit it in because of this. You know, lots of reasons pop up.
Yeah.
And so you've got to help them understand that this will happen. And I always say to trainers, when you first start with a client, it's well worth explaining the stages of change in terms of this is the journey we're going to go on together. But the most important part to explain to your client is relapse. Right. And they go, why would you do that? Why would you tell them about when they have a problem and they're going to drop? I said, because if you don't talk about it, when it does happen, they're going to catastrophize it. So something will go wrong and they'll just go, oh, well, that's it. I've messed it all up. I might as well carry on eating the takeaways. I'll sod it. I'll start again next Monday. And then they go mad over the weekend, eat everything, drink and everything. Monday comes around and they just think, nah, it's screwed up now. I'll sod it. I'll leave it. And they just drop out of the program. And it can sometimes be quite a gradual thing. But if you've talked to them about relapse, when it happens and they, you know, you ring them on why have you not turned up for training today? Oh, well, this happened and it's rubbish and I've eaten the takeaway. You can then go, do you remember when we first met, we talked about relapse and how you were going to manage it? And they go, oh yeah, I kind of vaguely remember. I said, right, okay, so what I want you to do is I don't want you to treat this as failure. I want you to treat it as feedback, learn something from it. And I want you to sit down and just think it through and think, okay, this is always going to happen because that's life. How can I manage it better next time it happens? And as long as you learn, that's been a really valuable experience to you. And now you can crack on. So don't see it as failure, see it as feedback. Don't catastrophize it. It's not the end of the world. And then teach your clients how to deal with it, how to manage it. Because in psychological terms, that type of relapse where they kind of think, oh, sod it, it's known as the what the hell effect. Right. And it's basically, it goes wrong and they go, oh, what the hell? I'm going to finish the pizza. I'm going to finish the bottle of wine. Yeah. And so if you understand that the what the hell effect is part of human nature, and it's for all of it, it's not a failing on your behalf. It happens to all of us. And so understanding that and understanding the behavior change process, again, it comes down to, do you as a coach understand the behavior change process? Because you need to explain it to your client so as they know what that journey will look like. Because if they don't, when they hit a bump in the road, they're just going to bail out. Yeah, it's all over. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant stuff there, Gary. I mean, I really appreciate that. Learning something new every time I speak to yourself, Gary. So let's just go into the courses and what is it you guys are offering. I know you mentioned before we hit record on this, you've got you're preparing some course was it for behavior change or was that more nutrition? Yeah, I've got kind of three main courses. There's an introduction to behavior change workshop, which is just e-learning. It's fairly cheap. It's kind of 3-4 hour course that you do, you self-paced. You'll get some tools from it. You'll learn a bit about yourself. You've then got the main workshop, which is behavior change and motivational interviewing. And that's run over 3 weekends online via Zoom, about 3 hours each module, excuse me. And I've now got the advanced behavior change, which looks at taking your MI skills, your motivational interviewing skills, and including cognitive behavioral therapy skills with it. So as you've got a complete package of kind of psychological tools that you can work with when you're working with a client. And so depending on what's happening with that client, you can employ one or both of those tools, because MI and cognitive behavioral therapy, CPT, they're used together quite a lot. If you look at the research base, the two are intertwined quite often.
Brilliant. And how can we find you, Gary?
My website, just above my head here, is
Nice.
www.stagesofchange, all one word, .co.uk. And on Instagram, Dr. Gary Mendoza.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant
and
stuff.
Twitter is Dr. Gary Mend. It's just the Mendoza short.
Good stuff. No, thank you, Gary. Thank you for your time. Just before you do go, is there a message that you want to, give to people? Like, let's say, the average Joe person looking to embark on their journey. What message would you give to somebody to just really try to understand that, this is a lifelong change and it's going to take time, etc.?
Think as weight loss or fitness or whatever, think of it as climbing a mountain. So when you've got to the point where you're really overweight or you're really unfit, whatever it might be, you are now at the summit. You've reached the peak of that mountain. You've got two choices at this point. You can either jump off, and generally jumping off a mountain injures you. It's not good for you. That's the quick fix. That's the 6-week transformation, the 12-week. That's the diet plan. That's the quick fix. Or the better option, walk back down the other side. It will be a longer journey, but it'll be a damn sight more comfortable, and you'll get to where you want to get eventually. It won't be quick, but then getting to the top of that mountain wasn't quick either. I always say to people, you don't wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and go, 3 stone, where did that come from? It took years to get there, and it may take years to get it off, but better to have a comfortable and enjoyable journey getting it off that you can stick with and enjoy it than jump off the mountain and injure yourself.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too appealing, to be honest. Brilliant. Well, thank you for that, Gary. I'll look forward to working with you in the future, and I'll be hopping on some courses for sure. Thank you for your time, Gary.
Great. Cheers, Janae. Thanks for inviting us on.
Enjoyed
Enjoyed the chat.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.